Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of this War and Peace series, picking up in September of 1808, and the French go first. They didn't get any reinforcements. They used a replacement point. Their movement included Joseph Bonaparte. Basically, Besserres and Bonaparte were here, and they split. Joseph gave all of his forces to Besserres, so he traveled alone back up to Bayonne, where he picked up 3 strength points that had been kind of built up over the last couple of turns. What he's going to do next is to be determined. It depends on some things going on elsewhere. Besserres decided he would try and attack Blake, but he did not succeed in his forced march roll. He didn't lose any strength points, but he wanted to hit Blake in the first round of combat, where he knew with 7 strength points he had a little bit of a buffer against these combined forces, but hit them in the first round, and then if Cuesta makes it in the second, So anyways, it didn't work out. The leader B over here in Lisbon decided to abandon ship. They know it's not going to get better as far as the strength point goes. The fact that Wellington didn't attack means that the British aren't that confident about their chances in a field battle at the moment, but they know that's going to very quickly increase the British strength. So they decided to just leave 1 strength point behind to force a siege. I don't know if the overrun counts in a siege. I know it's like 4-1 or something. So, I don't know. I'll look it up. And they decided to hightail it out of here. They wanted to force march 3. They ended up losing a strength point, only moving 1. But these 3 strength points here have not had a leader for anyone to move them around, so they want to get another leader in here. They're kind of a little bit short. Also, the thing about this game is because you can't leave control markers, you have a lot of pieces laying around the board that are basically useless because they're just supply line pieces. You can't attack with them, you can't move with them. You can, but and supply is not too brutal in this game. If you have 5 or under, you can pretty much get away unscathed. But winter's coming up. I am doing weather, but the weather cannot be affected in Spain through the month of September. October it could be, but through now it doesn't. So as that gets worse, as will the supply. So and then the 2 significant things, leader A or C, I don't remember which one, was up here. If you remember, they marched down to join the other leader in Valencia, and they're going to attack Castaños, and then Victor marched back across the Ebro and will attack Palafox. I was very tempted not to do this, but I decided to go for it anyways. So let's zoom in here, and we'll do these 2 combats. First, we'll go with down here, because I think this is the more favorable one for the French. So Castaños has a total of 5 strength points, one of which is cavalry. One thing I did not do in the first video is if you retreat, the side that is withdrawing is the technical word. If they have less cavalry than the side that's not withdrawing, they lose a strength point. Basically, the cavalry is harrying your retreat and picking away at your forces and supply training as you go. So I didn't do that, but I'll do my best to remember. So 5 strength points here for Castaños. And leader A and C combined have 4, 7. So 7 against 5, which the 5 means that on the strength point chart here, they could possibly get 2. But you can see the next big step is here. Once you get to 6, 7, 8, that's when you really start to get meaningful losses that can be inflicted. So 5 versus 7, that is still a 1-to-1. And there is a +1 to the French because they're the larger force. So let's get these 2 dice in here. And it was a 2. So that's not great. 4 + 1, 5. So the modified die roll is a 5. So the larger force actually will take, I'm assuming that this is the amount they take and not the amount they deal. I've never thought about that until just right now. But yeah, this is worse. This is better. Yeah. So 5, they'll take a 1. The smaller force is a 5. So that is 1. that they will take. So that's unfortunate for them. So now it is 6-5. It doesn't change the outlook too much, so they're gonna press on here. For the second round, the Spanish, they know that they can withdraw without having to worry about the cavalry because they have one, and the French have none. The only thing to think about is retreating across the river hex. I'm not sure if that has any effect. Yeah, I'm not sure. I just worry that if they retreat across a hex side, river hex side, that they may have to like lose a strength point or something like that. Let me check that really quick and come back because I don't want to. Palafox may do the same thing, you know, so I don't want to mess that up. So the only thing I see is that you can't retreat across a all hex, hex side. So the exception being in Denmark, where you know there's all those islands very close together near Copenhagen. So I'm assuming that if they could retreat across that, then Castaños can retreat across that river hex there. So for him, you know, they're one strength point down in this fight, so they can still, you know, hang in for another round. But once again, this is their regular forces. They're still fighting with infantry here. So there's not really a whole lot more they can do. Giving one and not taking one strength point loss is pretty darn good. So they're actually just gonna withdraw across the river. And they will advance. I don't know if you have to advance with everybody or if you can choose who advances. I don't know. I'll look it up. And now Victor up here and Palafox. Victor has the smaller force actually. He has 5 strength points and Palafox has 6, one of which is cavalry. So he can't withdraw without losing a strength point, Victor. So that was kind of one of the reasons we didn't want to fight here. It still will be a +1 to the French for morale. So 5 and 4 is a 9, +1 is 10, which bodes well. So that'll be 1 and a D1. The smaller force here is a 5, so it's 1 loss each. And the Spanish are demoralized by 1. Now, once again, all of their forces are at 1 morale, so if they lose 1, they are forced to retreat. So Victor will go from 5 down to 4, and Victor will go from 6 down to 5, and they'll be forced to retreat, which is honestly okay because they would probably withdraw by choice anyways after that first round. So there are definitely worse things that could have happened. And here, if they can retreat, the only thing I don't like about that is this is a free 3 movement points. Like it's 1, 2, 3. So if he can retreat across here into the mountains, I mean, like, there's no restriction to that as far as I can tell. I really don't see anything. So somebody let me know. I don't know if you're, you know, technically you could get 6 you really could get 9 movement points if you would know. I was gonna say you could. No, that is true. You could get 9 because if the battle was here and he moved 3, he gets to move 3 here if he wins, and then he's attacked on his turn and has to fall back. I mean, that could be 9 movement points you could get on a turn. So that's the only reason I hesitate on that. So let me know if it is somewhere and I'm missing it. But until I don't see anything, and until I see something that's different, I'm gonna let him go to the fullest of that extent. I don't see the point in backing up to Barcelona. You know, it's not that big of a thing right now. Okay, so that ends the combats for both sides. The French feel pretty good about themselves. Didn't do as much as they would like, but they have repelled the Spanish. So now the Spanish will get the British as well, will get their reinforcements, and we'll go from there. So the Spanish, the Allied forces, really have shaken things up this turn. They got a decent amount of reinforcements and replacements. So Moore and Leader A, one of the nondescript leaders for the British, landed in Barcelona. There was a couple of options here. They could reinforce Wellington in Portugal. I didn't see the need. There's no real resistance from the French in Portugal. They could have landed in San Sebastian and then come down to Burgos or Pamplona. The problem is there they could be very quickly surrounded and outnumbered. So they decided to land in Barcelona and unite with Palafox, who got 3 partisan reinforcements. So his strength is now 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. He now has 8 forces plus 8 strength points plus the 4 of the British. So I mean, 12 versus Victor's 4 is pretty substantial. So that will be one battle we'll have there that could kind of roll up the French in the Basque country, basically. Let me see. La Romana arrived here in Cartagena. He's the last of the Spanish generals, and kind of reunited with Castaños. He's daring the French to come across the river and fight him, which they probably will not do. Blake and Cuesta came down from Ciudad Rodrigo to Talavera, and they're trying to intercept this French leader here in this river valley. They've tried to force march to here, but it failed. So they could still come this way, but they're trying to cut them off. Because they didn't get the force march, they're kind of at risk of being attacked from here, and Bessarres kind of closing down on them. And then Wellington's going to begin the siege of Lisbon. Joseph as well is up here, but he'll be joined by 14 strength points, including Napoleon, in November. So that there's a 2-month gap, or I guess one technically month gap now. They got to wait through October until a large portion of the French regular army arrives. So the Allied forces are trying to do as much damage as they can and really set back the French before the full force. And if you look at the rest of the British, Spanish reinforcements, there's really not a whole lot, to be honest. They get just a few strength points here and there, but really it's mostly just replacements from here on out. So they're kind of at their peak as far as their strength goes. Of course, there's a lot of pieces in replacements and stuff like that, but the French are going to get one big wave of guys here, so they want to try and do as much damage as possible. So we'll start over here. The French are going to take this as a siege. They are not interested in field battle against Wellington with 1 strength point. So we'll roll for that later. And then over here, the big one, it's 12 versus 4. Let me look up the overrun rules really quick for both this and that, because they didn't actually look them up earlier. Okay, so cities can never be overrun, and it's 4-1. So they're okay here, barely. And this one is not gonna happen just yet. So, okay, so 12 versus 4 here. That 1 strength point makes a big, it's actually 5. No, sorry, it is 4. They're here, not there. I don't know why they're there, but it's 4. So it will be 2 for the morale of the French. And then the Spanish, they have 5 strength points at 1, which is more than their partisans. So they're at 1. They have 5 of those. The British only have 4 of theirs, so it will be 1 morale point plus the 2 of Moore, who's a decent leader. Let me zoom in on this. He's a decent leader. So subtract that from the French 2 and Victor's 1, and that should put them even, I think, because they get 3 and they get 3. Yeah. So it's a net nothing. So a 10, that's very good. So we're looking at 10 here. Smaller force D1, 1 for the Spanish. So the smaller force in this case is 4, so that's just 1 and 1. The French are demoralized by 1, so we'll take them down to 3. And then they're going to lose 1, and they're going to take that from here. They'll lose a partisan. Okay, so now the French, the problem is if they withdraw, are going to lose a strength point because they have less cavalry. But now they're at 3 to something else, 11. So, you know, there's not really a whole lot better that can happen here. So they are going to withdraw and lose a strength point. I always knew that was going to be the result of this particular combat, but a convincing, resounding victory for the Allied forces there. So this is it at the end of September. Let's roll over here. They're looking for a 1 to end that siege. And they get it. I swear, I have not had a siege over 1 turn, I don't think. And every time but 1, it succeeded. It's remarkable. So much for the French plans of having Lisbon hold up Wellington for a little while. And that will increase the Portuguese city points by 2. So they now have access to all 6 points a turn to buy replacement points with. So Portugal, for all intents and purposes, is liberated. Pretty easy job for Wellington, and now he can be free to pursue as well. So that's pretty good overall result. So that will wrap up September. October, neither side has any real reinforcements coming in, so not that to look forward to, but that November turn is going to be consequential in the outcome of the war. So I was completely wrong on the reinforcement schedule. All of those actually for the French happen in October, not November. So you can see over here on the French leader display, Napoleon has come in. He has 10 troops with him, variation of infantry, guard cavalry, and then some allied forces. Then Lannes is here as well. He also has 10 with a mixture to where it keeps the morale at 2. And then Ney is in, and he has, I think 6. He has 6. So we divided them up. Let's take a closer look. We're not going to be able to zoom in. But you can see them up here in Bayonne and Toulouse. So the plan here is that we've got Napoleon and Ney, who have a combined strength of 16 here in Toulouse. And Lannes and Joseph Bonaparte have a combined strength of 14. So Napoleon is going to come this way around, and Lannes may or may not assist in that. I'm not entirely positive whether he will or won't. I'm going to kind of let maybe see what happens on other parts of the map, because 16 will be more than enough to dispatch the British forces. They have significantly fewer, so that will be plenty. They don't need to overkill. But the thing is here, they want to be able to prevent their line of retreat, force them back south, and then maybe they can just fully surround them. But it's a huge group of forces, and from here on out, the French definitely get more reinforcements, but a majority of them are on the map that they're going to see for the rest of the war. And then, of course, they're going to lose Napoleon at some point. Lannes actually dies in 1809, so he'll go away. He doesn't die in Spain, but he dies. He goes away and dies in Austria. So there's they're going to lose leaders, but the forces, most of them will stay. So that's going to be the big move for the French here. They have a lot more forces, and they're going to use them. So this is the October turn, meaning that the weather chart is a little bit steeper in Spain. Spain gets like a plus because it's, you know, more, it's not really tropical, but more Mediterranean weather. So it's pretty unlikely that you're going to get wet weather anywhere in this area. Once you get in October, it's pretty likely. So the weather is wet, which means everybody's movement allowance is reduced by 1. So rather than being able to move 3, you can move 2. So obviously that's coming at a bad time for the French. Napoleon came across the Pyrenees, had to force march to do it. Ney could not. Lainez and Joseph decided not to try and join in. Victor marched around from Saragossa to where Napoleon is, because that gives him now the larger force. These guys decided not to move at all. Becerrez positioned himself in between these two. He'll no longer be unsupplied. Positioned himself between Toledo and Madrid, just in case Blake gets any ideas about striking one of those two positions. And they're going to initiate combat here because, like I said, they will be just slightly the larger force. There is a particular movement that I don't know if they can do because there's not a leader here. But anyways, the French have a particular movement. Like if Ney was here, let's say, he could do roll a die and try and move over here. It's not really applicable in this circumstance, but they will attack here. So I'm going to just double check. It's 10 for Napoleon, and Victor has 2. It's 12. Now Moore has 2. Leader A has 2. 4 plus 2, 4, 6, 7. So 4 and 7 is 11. So yes, they will have it by just a single point. What the dual part of this is, let's see if we can zoom in. The double-edged sword for this, or really it's a double advantage for the French, is that the composition of the Spanish forces means that they are going to be at 1 morale rather than 2. And Napoleon's going to get another +1 because of his leadership bonus. So it's going to be a +2 modifier for the French because they stacked the army specifically so that everyone would be able to have the 2 morale not be diluted down to 1. Whereas the Spanish really went for manpower over morale. So here we go, +2 modifier for the French. So it's a 3 and a 6. And that will put us at 9. And it's going to go this way to 11. So a D2 and a 1. So that is not great. We're going to get some good numbers here because the smaller force is 11. So a D2, wow. Wow, 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 wow. So -2 for the French, 5. And the -2 is going to mean they're out of this combat, the morale. Wow, D2, that's going to take them down by 5, from 11 to 6, and from 12 down to 10 for the French, and that is brutal. And I'm just adjusting here because you have to keep this stuff correct as far as the replacements go, so you have to match them up. I'll do that in a second, but that'll end the combat round, and Moore will have to retreat. Once again, I haven't seen anything that says that they can't retreat across River Hexite into a mountain. So in order to be safe, because they also have to remember that there are French forces down here, I guess the best place for them to go is just to retreat. The only thing is they would be out of supply. None of this is great. It was honestly, if they would have thought a little bit harder, they probably wouldn't have landed in Barcelona. They can move 2 strength points by sea. So if they do it right, they could evacuate both Moore and Leader A out from Barcelona on their turn, leave Palafox to the dogs. But, you know, at least they save those leaders. Or they can just try and get across here and make their way down. Not be pretty, especially considering that it's wet weather and the winter's going to get worse. Like, winter turns are coming up, there's going to be 4 of them, and you're only going to be able to move like 2 hexes. It's going to be basically 1, 2, 3. Like, it's pretty brutal. The only thing is they could go south and attempt to meet up with Castaños and La Romana, who have a bit more forces down there, so it's tough. Don't really want to leave Palafox to be obliterated. So they're going to bring him across here, and Napoleon will move in. So instant impact from Napoleon, who absolutely obliterates the British Allied forces. 5 strength points destroyed from their end. That is brutal. So the Spanish Allied forces have taken their turn. More skedaddled out of there back into Portugal. Made a big move over. Wellington is advancing out of Lisbon. There's going to be a battle here. Blake was trying to catch this French leader out from Talavera, and he's going to be able to do that. Castaños and La Romana have united here, and Palafox has pulled south. He's given himself the option to hop into the mountains if he's pursued. So that they're probably going to try and do a pincer move here, or he might just escape across the mountains and they all get away. So let's do this battle here. It's a pretty small one. Palafox has a pretty substantial force, augmented by militia, which of course means that his morale is lower. But he has 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 against 2, 12 against 2. Is not 4 to 1 odds, so they're not overrun. It's going to be a +1 bonus to the French because the Spanish have a +1 on the leader, and the French have a +2 on the morale, so that will be +1 for the French. So the smaller force is a 2, so the casualties won't be vast. So that is a 10 -1. It'll be a 9. So it's a 0, 1. And the 1 here with a smaller force of 2 is just 1. So they will lose 1 strength point and withdraw. Technically, they don't have to withdraw, of course, but on what earth would they stay and fight? So they will withdraw. And they have the equal number of cavalry here because their only strength point left is cavalry. So they don't lose the other strength point due to that withdrawal. Okay, so we're going to start November. It's the first turn of winter, which has some effects also. It's going to be the beginning of the execution of a French plan to, it's not really a plan, but basically they're going to start focusing now on the actual victory objective, which is capturing these cities. So Nia is going to come down to Barcelona. Joseph is going to go to San Sebastian. Talavera now can be picked up. They got to hold on to Valencia, so somebody's got to go and help him, probably Bonaparte. And then someone might stick out to go to Coruna. Ciudad Rodrigo is also available. So they're going to start fanning out, and really, now that they've pushed the Spanish down to the southern parts and the British are isolated in Portugal, they can start fanning out, get these cities, and I feel like it actually may be possible for them to get the automatic victory. Before, I really didn't feel it was a possibility, but now very well could be. Still some roadblocks, but on to November. So very little reinforcements for the British. They did get a couple of infantry strength points to come in. The Spanish don't get any besides replacements. And this didn't involve a lot of stuff going on besides just repositioning movement. The British are moving east. The hard part is they can't use Spanish cities or Spanish forces for supply, so they have to use Portuguese forces, but they can't use Portuguese militia. Militia and partisans can't leave the home country. So yeah, they obviously can't get access to the regular infantry until they've used all of the partisan and militia replacement points, which they haven't done yet. So their supply lines can only stretch so far. And during the winter, it's pretty brutal. So they can't really go that deep in without risking losing strength points. So pretty much there's like a line like right here where they can go, which is enough to protect Ciudad Rodrigo, and maybe get to Talavera, but not much further. The only thing of interest really that happened here is Palafox is going to stay, and he's going to try and hold Napoleon up. They're going to besiege Valencia, and not really because they think that they can hold the city, but more because they can take out the 3 French infantry strength points there. So Palafox is going to kind of sacrifice himself to hold Napoleon. The only problem is he can't really fully block Napoleon, because there is a very slight connection right there. I'm guessing it's kind of hard to tell. You should probably see it when we zoom in. So very light. So I'm not sure if that counts as a hex side, but he's here. He can't really go anywhere that fully blocks Napoleon. Now, he would have to go 1-2 force march, and force marching is pretty easy when you only need 1, because he thought about that. He thought about, well, let's just go around and attack. It's not that big of a deal. So Palafox could always stick out his cavalry point like this to kind of form a better blockade, because they don't want to lose these strength points, but taking out 3 French infantry points, it's going to be 3 turns to take them to recoup those, and they're going to start at the back of the line up here. So they kind of view that as a risk worth taking. So they'll do that instead next turn. So all we have to do now is just roll. If it's a 1, which they've had incredible luck, they'll take out these 3 strength points. If it doesn't work, they'll probably just let the weather do its course. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. They do need to leave a strength point here, though. So let me grab one out so that they have a supply line. They were cut off over here. The move that they made, that's a 5, to attack on this side actually left the Spanish forces here out of supply, and they lost some strength points because of that by losing Talavera. So Wellington's joined them there, and they have supply lines backwards now. So here we go. If they get a 1, those 3 French strength points are gone, and it's a 5. So it's one of the first times that it hasn't worked. So December now, no reinforcements besides replacements for the rest of the year. And I actually did look at the reinforcement schedule, and I'm pretty sure that I've looked at it correctly, unlike last time. And it's kind of a bell curve for the French. As far as the victory goes, and the further on we go, the more likely it is. But there's a point we reach where things start to decline. The French and the British don't really get any more reinforcements. They get a few strength points here. Replacement points go up and down, but pretty much they've got nothing of note coming. And the French have a little bit, but a lot of what they're going to see from here on out is withdrawing. Napoleon's going to be withdrawn some point next year, some point in the middle of the next year. So obviously this reflects that the British didn't have a lot of land war they were fighting. At this point, the War of 1812 hasn't started, and they're not fighting in continental Europe besides here, whereas the French have got fighting everywhere. So it just shows you that the balance of that. So the French have definitely spread out, as you can see. I kind of motioned this. The Spanish are now down to just 15 city points, and they're pretty much all in the south, with the exception of Coruna up here. So the French are definitely on the march in Spain. So the French here in December have taken their action. There wasn't, as far as I remember, any reinforcements, and they just basically spread out. Barcelona, these other towns are falling, reorganizing forces. But I actually changed what went on over here. In the last segment, I was talking about how They were going to hold up Napoleon. I forgot about the overrun rules. So if it's 4-1, you can expend an extra point to eliminate the force, an extra movement point. 5-1 if it's in mountains, and if it's 6-1, you can just march straight through them. And they could do that. They could either march around them if they had both their 2 strength points together, or they could just march through them if they divided. So there was no real reason to stay up there and just be eliminated. So they decided to come back to Valencia. They couldn't get everybody away. So they said they'll have a fight, and then maybe after 1 round, back away. So that's a change I made from the Spanish. And there's another one over here. Is it Ciudad Rodrigo? Yes. Lainez is attacking there against 2 militia, so that should be a pretty easy fight. And then once they've grabbed that, the British can't really attack them head on because they don't have the strength points to do it. Then it'll be the question then, will the French pursue them into Portugal, or they've got this center area pretty much locked up. So let's go and do these battles. We'll do the exciting one first. Down here. So the Spanish have 3 generals. Castaños, La Romana, and Palafox. And obviously Napoleon, and these forces under here can come into play on the second round, but I don't anticipate there being a second round of this combat because the Spanish don't really want to stick around. The force differential is not too big. It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 for the French and 8 for the Spanish. And there are no modifiers. So as far as terrain goes, the morale is 1 for the Spanish and 2 for the French, so +1. And then leaders 3-1 in favor of the French, so 2. So it's going to be an overall modifier of +3 for the French. And we'll roll here. That's a 4. So that is good for the smaller force. So that we're going to shift it 3 to 7, and they're both just going to take 1 result, which will come over here. The smaller force is 8, and a 1 result is 1 each. So from 9 to 8, and from 8 down to 7. Not too disappointing, especially with the amount of shifts in that one with +3. Really could have ended up on the far end of that scale. It would have been a lot worse. So they're going to break off the combat and retreat. I mean, just because the modifiers are so huge, and there's no sense in getting into a meat grinder here with the only real force remaining of all regular forces. So they're gonna pull back, maybe sit on the other side of a couple of rivers and try and slow Napoleon down until he has to withdraw. Save your good forces until later. So they'll pick that strength point back up. And they will secure Valencia, relieving leader A and leader C, who are being besieged. Now over here, we have Lainez, who has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, up against 2 militia. So obviously we're not too enthused about his odds, but you never know. So that'll be a 0 morale against a 2 morale, so +2 for the French, +2 more for the leader, and you can never get more than a +4 die roll modifier, so it shouldn't be much of a contest here. 3, once again, getting on this low side, have to bump it up. So from 3 to 7, it's a 1-to-1. The small force here is a 2. So pretty much the minimum you can take is 1. So that militia will bump up by 1. I'll need to find a 1 strength point in militia. I will say, this isn't really a complaint about this game necessarily, but you know, each of these, I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a showing here. You know, all of the minor allies and stuff like that, I forget what they call it, minor factions, minor states, they all have their own counters, you know, and they're beautiful. They have the uniforms, which are really cool. Like even the partisans and the militia for each side, like I love that. That is beautiful. But I don't know if I would have put them all in there making this game. I don't know if it was like that in the original, if they were just strength points, but like having to go in and find this specific one there's probably like 7 strength points for the Swiss. And you have to go and find one amongst many. I've got this pretty well divvied up into blocks. I have 2 separate counter dividers, counter organizers, and it's still difficult. I'm not going to put each one of these in their own separate thing and, you know, or have baggies out the wazoo. So, you know, I like that they are having individual units, but you probably could have just had minor and major. You could have just French units and then all minor state units. And I don't really think that would have caused any difficulties. It would be easier. Like I said, people don't really play this game because it's easy, so I get that, but just a little minor thing. So retreat there. Here, you know, lose the strength point, you just retreat, who cares? You're not going to do anything to Lainez, who will take a strength point hit, by the way. And now yet another major city has fallen to the French, and that's going to collapse the city points from 15 to 13. So they're in a pretty good situation now, the French, to go in for the 5 remaining major Spanish cities and 2 Portuguese ones. Remember, they need the small ones too, but I think we're pretty pleased with the progress so far. So over to the Spanish to try and put this fire out. So the Allied forces just basically repositioned. Nothing of too much excitement happened, no reinforcements. The only thing of note is that Wellington is going to go on the offensive and attack Bessarres. Basically, they're just going to try and bloody their noses. They're not going to really advance any further. It's the Tagus River, and they're going to attack Talavera. So they have 14, and the French have 8. So obviously they have the numbers, but the modifiers are going to be even. +2 for morale here because it's 0 to 2. +1 for the leaders, 3. And then they have 3 themselves. So it's going to be even. And the British, Wellington thinks that's a risk that he can afford to take. So roll it up here. That is a 9, which is good. It's actually really good. The smaller force is going to lose just 1, and they'll lose none. So 8 on 1. That is just a single strength point. So they've inflicted 1 without taking 1 themselves. And now the French have to decide to withdraw, or the British are going to continue on, actually. The French, it's not really worth it to continue this fight. There's just no point in sinking in strength points here. If they're higher, it gets worse. But the modifiers are also lower, so they're kind of tempted to keep going. They're going to do one more round. Both sides, I think, are okay with that. So this time it's not as good of a number. 4. So D1, 1. So they'll both lose 1 again. They're at 7 this time. So in the end, it's going to be 2 strength points lost for the French and 1 for the Spanish. But of course, this will end the combat because the Allied forces cannot have their morale degraded anymore. They're already at 0. So it'll force the end of combat, and I think that they'll be okay anyways. They were never going to take Talavera if the French retreated. They were just going to kind of hit and run tactic. So 2 for 1 is pretty good, especially with just 1. I believe they can take that from the militia. If it was 2, I think they would have to split it between regulars and not regulars, but with 1, I believe they can just take it from the militia. So that's actually a really good return. So that will wrap up the December turn and the year of 1808. So from here, this obviously is 2 episodes, just on like 4 months each or something like that. That's obviously going to be way too long of a series if we're trying to get to 1815, which it may end before that. So I'm probably just going to try and cover an entire year in one turn next time around. Cover things lighter than I have been here. You kind of get a flow for things. Most of it's mundane. Not show you all the battles if they're not consequential, and then kind of pick up a different pace through the last half of this series. But hope you've enjoyed this bit. It hasn't come out yet, but I'm really trying to urge people to subscribe to my channel. You know, I've never asked before because this has always been something that's just been fun, but there is an opportunity to monetize this because I get well above the amount of view hours that I need. Actually, I've got a couple of very popular series. The only thing I'm missing is 1,000 subscribers. And right now, as of recording of this video, I'm at like 500 and change. So a lot of you, I'm sure, watch, enjoy the content, respond, and all that stuff. I get great feedback from people. Just clicking that subscribe button does a lot, because that could mean making just a little bit of money that I can invest in this and continue to improve the channel. All it takes is a click. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for your time. Just at the end of this video, just click the subscribe button. And I feel very cheesy saying it because you always see people say it. You never imagine yourself saying it. But I'm going to be doing a video kind of dedicated to this, where I kind of explain the change in demeanor of the channel, a little bit of just trying to push a little bit towards subscribers, because all I need is about 500, a little bit under 500, and we can begin monetizing, for me, this. And I don't mean anything different than what you're already seeing. Many of you already have to watch ads to see my videos, especially if you're looking at the more popular ones. So it's not going to change for you. It just means that there's money that YouTube's getting that I'm not. So why should YouTube get that money that I'm creating for them? I'm creating ad revenue for them and the companies that pay for it. So why not I get a piece of that? So that's the big thing there. So if you can, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And until next time, this has been War and Peace. So far, the French look like they're going to roll through.